So in this session, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you a simple application which I would be using table UI element and toolbar UI element. Then I will be also showing you how to consume a publicly available OData service and how to display them inside the table. In our previous examples, whenever I wanted a data to be displayed using a model, the data that is required for me that I have just created by myself. I have created a sample data myself and I created model based upon that and we have performed the binding. So this time what I'm going to do is I'm just going to consume a OData service that are basically available. So I would be explaining you what is OData service, what are the operations that we can do with the OData service and all the other things in a later stage. But today my intention is to show you how to consume it and display them on the screen. So I'm just going to just give me a minute. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm just going to consume it and I'm going to show it. So for now, just rest assured that OData, it's a protocol just like your XML or HTTP protocol. So it's a protocol using which we are going to connect to a server and we are going to get the data from that particular server. So if you are aware about ODBC programming, so in the database model there are two types of connectivity basically. One is JDBC and another one is ODBC. With JDBC you have to have a throughout uniform programming language right from the front end to the back end system, whereas in JDBC, sorry, in ODBC you do not have that restriction that you should be having the same language. Say for example our ABAP server uses ODBC type of connectivity. Now I may have a backend system as an Oracle server, but whatever the SQL statement that I'm writing, it's a open SQL. I'm not writing SQL statements for Oracle directly. I'm writing open SQL. My database interface later on they converted it into the corresponding language and it retrieves me the data. So this makes me that I do not have to have a uniform technology throughout the entire thing. So that's the same concept with SAP OData as well. OData was initially founded by Microsoft organization. Then later on, many of the companies they started contributing for the development of OData. So OData was now considered as an open source, and SAP uses this this way of exposing the data so that it can build application that will work on top of any systems. So there has to be no restrictions. So it will work with SAP BW, it will work with SAP HANA, it will work with SAP Business Suite, and it can be OData service can be also consumed by Visual Basic programming, that is from that is using Excel, Word. Even from this you can consume the OData service. So OData service basically provides you the data in three formats. One is atom format, JSON format, or XML format. So whichever format is suitable for you, you can consume the data in that particular format. So what I'm going to do today is here, this is the standard website for OData. Here you can find a lot of information on what is OData and why it is created for. So in the developer section, you can find some of the references service that are hosted publicly. So I can use these services in order to build a application for them. So here I'm just using this OData service. If you see here, each and every collection is called as an entity. A entity is nothing but information about a specific product. Say for example, a sales order is an entity, a purchase order is an entity, a business partner detail is an entity. So entity is basically a collection of information about one particular object. So that is what entity is called as. So also there can be an n number of entities. So together I call them as a entity set. So here in this example, a product is an entity set which can have n number of product details is an entity set, categories is an entity set which can have n number of categories. So this is the service URL, and in a similar pattern you will get a service URL from SAP NetWeaver gateway server as well. So if you're going to execute that server here, the only difference is going to be is that it is going to ask you for the username and password to log into that particular system. Once you're logging into that system, it is going to the backend according to the service definition. It is going to fetch the data and it is going to list out your entity set. So it is going to list you out in the same way. Now if you wanted to see a data for a particular entity set, then you have to append that particular entity set along with the URL. So now now it shows you only the product of the data, sorry, only the data of the products entity set in the form of a JSON format. So now I just copied this data. There is a JSON editor online. There is a website for that, inside which you can align your JSON code. So just paste the code and you click on align. So this is going to align you properly. So this is going to be the first product record, and this is going to be the second product record, and this is going to be the third product record, and so on. So there are some of the operations that we can do with the gateway, so sorry, do with the services, like filter operations, sort operations, then query operation, and so on. So those are things that we are not going to do it now, that we will be doing it as a part of a gateway classes. Now my intention is just to consume the service, and whatever is the data that is available here in the product service, I'm going to display that in the form of a table. So first let me go ahead to the system, and I will create a application project. So I have just created an application with a view. Since I'm going to construct the table, I have to include the library for table, that is sap.ui.table. So in the doInit method, I'm going to construct my in the doInit method, I'm going to construct my service. Now variable o model is equal to, this time in the previous scenarios I have constructed JSON model. This time I can either go ahead and construct the JSON model to consume the service. So it's not that the gateway server can be consumed only by Odata model. It can be consumed by any type of model. The only difference is that I have told you the other day that the different models works in a different way. If you take JSON model or XML model, there are no server side features, which means each and every operation that you're going to do, everything is going to be completely loaded into your client device, that is your browser's memory, and it is going to reduce the performance of your applications. So the preferred way for consuming the gateway services using Odata service. So for that, I'm just creating the instance of the Odata service, which is sap.ui.model.json. Odata model. So I'm just creating the OData model, and I wanted to pass the service URL. So basically the OData model, if you look at this particular interface, it is going to tell you that the first parameter that you are passing is service URL, and the second parameter that you are going to pass is username, third parameter is going to be password, and fourth parameter is going to be whether you wanted it in JSON format or not, and so on. So whenever we are going to consume a service in from a gateway perspective, you may have to pass this username and password, because if the default username and password is not maintained for the service, then there should be some mode using which you must be able to log into their gateway server and fetch the data. So for that authentication mechanism, you may have to pass the username and password, but typically that is not done, because people may be able to see your username and password in the debugger mode. So what we do is, we go to the SICF transaction, and in that we will maintain the default username and password using which you have to log into the system and fetch the details. So here I have to pass the service URL. So currently the supported version of OData services 0.2, sorry, 2.0 is the current supported version of Odata by SAP. 3 is already a fully fledged Odata service. 4 is under construction. So if you are going to use the Odata service 4, that may not work with our SAP UI5, but Odata 2 and 3 are compatible with our SAP UI5. So here I am going to use this Odata service, this one. So this is the URL that I wanted to pause. So I do not want to pause this. So up to this I have to pause. So I have constructed my model consuming this particular service. Now what will happen is, whatever the entity that are written by the service, all the entity will be holded inside this model. So next thing, in order to be able to access this model in my view, I'm going to set it to the core sap.ui.get core of set model o model, and I set it with the id products. So I'm just creating it as a named model. Then I'm just writing the model to the log as well, so that I can know whether my model has been created or not. So just I'm just going to create some sample layout for now variable. So now I'm just going to go ahead and execute my application. I have actually haven't done anything as of it. I have only created a model which is consuming the particular service. So if I go ahead and run this application, I'm going to go, I'm going to have to get an error. So if you see here, now I have got this error 501 resource cannot be implemented. Then after that, this is the important error, which is XML HTTP request cannot be loaded. Resource failed to load with the status 501 and so on. So it is basically telling me that I am not able to consume that service, right? So basically there is a reason behind that. The reason is that the application which you are existing, it is executing in the server local host, whereas the server it's available in the request services.odata.org. This is the server in which our service is available, but whereas I am trying to access from a different host. So when the host is going to be different, what happens is browser it is going to do a restriction by itself, not allowing you to do the cross communication. So cross communication reference means you are communicating from one server to another server. So without certain authentication mechanism, the server that should provide to the browser that okay, let this service fetch the data from me. Only in that cases you will be able to consume the service. So this is the service that is a third party service, which means I don't have the access to access it. So what we can do is I can disable the proxy, so that I will tell the browser that don't check it boss, I'm just going to consume it. So don't check from which server I am calling or which server it is going to come from. So this work with this particular example, but this approach will not work with all the cases, because these services are created in a way that the public should consume that service and they should build application on top of that and they should learn. That is the reason behind they have created this particular services. So they don't actually care if I am going to skip the proxy and try to consume the application. So in order to skip the proxy, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to remove this thing and I'm just going to say proxy. So I'm just going to say this proxy and this. Okay, I do not have the ambersands, and where did I got this from? Fine. So now you can see that I did not get any errors and my Odata has been created. So you can see that the object has been created over here. So I have just pasted it to the console, and from here I will be able to see this data. So typically what happens is when you are going to load a Odata service, you don't get the data immediately. So if you see in the Odata section, you are not going to find anything at all. And one more thing that I wanted to set is the maximum data service version and the word data service version that is supported by this model, it's 2.0. But whereas the service which I am consuming from the public is 3.0. So I may have to extend the header version to 3.0, so that will make this compatible along with the service and it will let me fetch the data. So this isn't problematic till now because only the model has been created, but the data has never been loaded at all. So the OData service, it loads in a typical way only after your application has been executed, then executed completely. Only after to that it is going to load the data and it is going to display it back on the screen. So you don't get the data immediately, unlike other services. In certain cases you will, but in most of the cases you will not get the service data immediately. So now I have constructed my model using the service. Then I have set the model to the core with the name product. Then after that, I may have to extend at the header version. So the couple of things that I wanted to extend here is, one is headers dot max data service version. So this I may wanted to extend. So for this, if you see the path, o model dot o headers dot maximum service version, this is the object. In the object you have this variable o headers. The variable is again of type object. So in that object again we have a variable max data service version. So I'm just going to set this o model dot o data dot, sorry, o headers dot maximum data service version is going to be 3.0. So I set the maximum service version to 3.0. So if you want the data service version to be set to 2.0 as well, you can set it. So now I am done with constructing my model. So my model has been successfully constructed based upon the data from the service. Now I can create the user interface and I can start consuming the data from the particular model. So what I'm going to do is, this time I'm going to display this product details. So this time I'm going to display this product details here. Whatever you are seeing, actually this has converted to JSON format directly by the Chrome browser. So I'm just going to display this product information as a table element. So now in order to check what are the fields that are available, you can always go ahead and say append the URL dollar meta data to the end of the URL to get to know what is the entity. So the entity here is product and it has the key, that is ID, and other properties includes name, description, release date, continue date, rating, price, and so on. So these are some of the steps that we will be seeing at later stage. So you don't have to worry about it right now. So I have set this max data service version to 3.0. I will set this data service version to 3.0 as well. It's not needed in this case, but let me just set it. Okay, now I'm just going to go ahead to the product view, and here I'm going to construct the table UI element. I have already included the library for table inside the index file. So now I can directly start using the controls in this. So in order to construct the table UI element, we need to have a class called sap.ui.table.table. So this contains some of the properties like what is the visible row count should be, what is the selection mode for the table, that is single lead select or multiple lead select, or and so on. So these are some of the options that you can set for the table UI element. So before that I will just open up the developer guide for the table so that you can understand. Also I will show you the anatomy of table as how it works. So just like your any table in the SAP UFA that you use, I mean ALV table or the table UI element in Web and Prop app. So this is how it is going to be, the table. So you create the reference of the table UI. You create the reference of the table UI. Then you construct the columns for the table and you add them. So you construct the column for the table, and inside the column you have two things. One is the label, that is going to be the header, and another one is going to be the template region. So template basically tells what type of view element is supposed to be over here. So that is what your template is going to tell you. So first I have to create a table view element, and for the table view element I have to create a column, and inside the column I have to create the label and template, and I have to add this column to the table. So this is what I'm supposed to do now. So I'm just going to go ahead and open up the, so the constructor summary is going to be sap.ui.table.table. So for constructing table, I'm just going to instantiate this sap.ui.table.table, and some of the property that I would like to set is the ID and the settings. The ID I'm going to give it as table ID, and some of the settings that I'm going to give are the visible row count property. By default 10 rows will be visible. I do not want that many rows to be visible, so I will just set it to 7. Only 7 row has to be visible by default, other will be included within the scroll mode. Then the selection mode. So selection mode, if you see, there are different types of selection mode that you can see it from here. There are multiple select, none, and single. If you're going to say none, then the entry of the row cannot be selected. That is, this is basically representing your lead selection in WebDesign Pro ABAP. I wanted single selection mode. If you are not going to specify the single selection mode, the default selection mode is going to be taken, in which you will have the single select, multi select, select all option, everything as well. Then some of the properties that I wanted to fill is mm, title. I do not want it to fill. Okay, so that's it. I wanted to fill for the table. Now I have constructed my table UI element. Then I have to construct the column for the table. So what are the properties that I'm going to display are, I'm going to display ID, name, and description. So these are the three columns that I'm going to, let's say, property and price as well. So there doesn't, so I'm just going to display these things as well. So we are going to create 5 columns. So what you can do is, you can create the instance of column separately and then you can add it to the table, or you can just call the add column method to add the column, and inside that itself you can create your column. So first column that I'm going to do is ID, which would be variable, sorry, for the table that you have constructed, I'm going to add a column. So in the add column method, you can by construct a column and you can add the reference of the column, or you can straight away create your column here, which is sap.ui.table.column is the name of the class, and this is going to take some of the important properties like I have told you, there are two important properties. One is label and another one is template. So label represent what is the UI element that has to be available there, that is going to be label anyway. sap.ui.commons.label, and the text should be ID. Then for the template, it's going to be sap.ui.commons.text field. As of now, I'm not going to do any binding over here, so I'm just going to say the value property as ID. So let me go ahead and create it as a text view. So now whatever the UI element that you are constructing here in this particular template region for the column, that is going to be the UI element for the entire column. So you can also change that dynamically, just like you do it in your WebDesign Pro app. So that is also possible. So I have added one column to the table. In similar way, I'm going to add three other columns to the table. This is actually a tedious approach of copying and pasting the code one after another. So I will later on in the future example, I will just show you how to get the metadata in the array, and based upon the array just loop it and create the table columns. So I will just show you that in a different scenario, maybe while we are doing this Fiori app. So name is my next column. So I have constructed my table UI. Then later on I have added three columns to that. So let's stop with three columns. Then after that, the table, it requires one of the important properties, which is I have told them that what is the row and what is the, sorry, I have told you what is the columns and what is the type of UI element that it should be. Now for each and every row in a table, I have to supply information. So from where that information should come from. So basically I am representing the aggregation binding over here as from where the table should get the value. So table that I specify using the bind rows method, I tell the system that in the model products, so products is the name of the model that I have specified, right? So in the model products, there is a section called products in which you have to, so if you see here, this is the products, because if I'm going to execute him such like this, then it is going to show me as the entity name as products. So from the model that I have created as product, so let me rename it to something else so that it will avoid confusion. So say model name. From the model name that I have created, yeah, from the model name that I have created, I wanted this entity set, that is the products. So the value to the table should come from this particular entity set. Then I return the table. So if I go ahead and refresh this application, it should give me the table UI, and you can see that there was nothing in the table at all because we haven't actually performed the binding. Now, since I have already got into this product section, which means I have already came inside this products, right? Now I just have to specify that. So I have already came inside the product entity set. Now I just have to directly specify the value id, name, description, release date, and so on. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to mark this relationship as a binding relationship now instead of hard coding one. So my system has already reached the products point. So I just have to go ahead and in the model I have to access the id and description. So basically I'm doing nothing just but a binding. So if I'm going to go ahead and refresh my application, okay, still it got nothing. Written word table binding text, at least this should have appeared. Just hold on for a minute, let me check it. Oops. I have given the property name in capitals, which is why we did not get the values. So now you can see that I have consumed the data and I have displayed it in the form of a table element. Now the next step that I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a toolbar to the table. So instead of adding the toolbar elements directly to the table, I'm going to create a toolbar element and then I'm going to add the toolbar element to the table. So if you go ahead and check here, in the you have this toolbar which support anything of type toolbar, right? So you can just go ahead and use any of this. So now I'm going to construct a toolbar first. Variable o toolbar is equal to, and this is going to take properties such as width, design and standalone. So design, I'm just going to add it as, say, we will go ahead with the standard design, or let's go ahead with transparent design. Then standalone, I do not want to add this. I wanted to add the items to the toolbar. So that can be anything, any of this particular type. It can be a button, image, label, link, or these are the UI elements that are supported to be added within the toolbar item. So items is the aggregation that I have to fill. So in that aggregation I'm going to fill three things, which is, just for the sake of just showing you the output, I'm just creating some three buttons: sap.ui.commons dot button text create icon. So icon I have already told you, sap dot icon create. Instead of getting it from the icon usage, basically this is the value that it is going to give you, that I have already shown you. So instead of getting it from there, I just thought I would directly hotcode the values here. Toolbar is going to be this. Okay, the property is toolbar and it is an aggregation. So I have just provided that. Now let me go ahead and refresh the application and I should be able to see the toolbar created. So you can see that the toolbar has been created for the table element. So if you wanted to set a title as well, then you can go ahead and add the title aggregation. So that you can do it by yourself. And since we are running out of time, I'm just going to go ahead with the next thing. So now I have just shown you how to consume the data and display it in the table. Now I'm going to add an event handler method for this selection, and when I'm going to select this, I'm just going to display it as a form beneath this table. So what I'm going to do is I'll just go and add the event handler method for this, and for that I have to handle the event row selection change is the event that I have to handle. So for that I am just going to go ahead and in the table I'm just adding this event, and I'm just going to handle this one right away here. So whenever this has been triggered, controller dot, what can I give the name, say display form. So this, whenever I click on this selection method, I wanted to call this display form method, and this display form method I'm going to create it in my, say I'm just going to give an alert to find out whether this is getting displayed triggered or properly. So just refreshing this. I haven't set any default lead selection, which is the reason why the lead selection was not triggered. You can set the selected index or something property was that you can set to have the default lead selection value. Now there is no lead selection. If I'm going to select something, then it means the lead selection is changing. So when I click on this, the button action is going to be triggered. When I go to the next one, the action is going to be triggered. When I go to the next one, the action is going to be triggered. So whenever this is going to be selected, I'm just going to display the complete details in the type of a form. So I have only displayed minimum information of 3 fields, but whereas this has some 7 fields. So I'm just going to construct a form for that quickly. So I'll just go ahead and do this. So I'll just do it now. I have already explained this thing, so I'll just do it without explaining you. Hmm. Okay, so I just created a simple form with this 5 elements. Then after the table, I will place this simple form. Since it is a vertical layout, it is going to be displayed in the form that I have specified, one after another. So you can see that beneath our table our form has been created and it is in a non-editable mode. Now whenever I'm going to select this, I'm going to get the entry of the selected row and I'm going to populate the other details. So in the selected row now we have only ID, name and description. So I'm just going to display more information like rating and price along with this. So this is what I'm going to do this. But before that, what I'm going to do is only when I'm going to select the lead, only in that case I'm going to make my product details visible. In other cases I'm going to make it non-visible. Only when I'm going to select this I'm going to make it visible. So first, to make it invisible, what I'm going to do is, so if you are remember from my jQuery class which I have taught you, dollar is the symbol that is going to be representing the form, jQuery object. So if I wanted to access something using ID, then I would use hash. If I wanted to access something using class, then I would access using dot. If I wanted to access everything, then I would use star. So these are some of the things that I have taught you. So now I wanted to access this form, so I'm using the ID that I have created for the form and I call the method hide to tell the browser to hide that. So now this has hidden the form. So this piece of code I will write it in the on after rendering method, because typically before you are constructing it you will not be able to hide it. So that's the reason why I'm first constructing it. After the construction has been done, I'm just hiding them. Okay. Okay, so now the first thing that we wanted is, I'm just going to select this one. I wanted to know which is the index that has been selected. So to do that, first I need to get the reference of the table. So using the core, I will get the reference of the table in the first place. So for that, variable o table is equal to sap dot ui dot get core of by id. I am passing the ID that I have used to create the table to get the reference back of it. So let me put a debugger here. So now that O table would be having the reference of the table. So if I'm going to refresh this application, if I'm going to select a lead, it is going to stop me right here. So if you see in the O table, it is going to have the reference of the table. So from the table is the one that will be knowing the index that is selected. So for that, I'm just calling the method get selected index, which is going to return me which is the index that is selected. So you can see that it has selected the 0th index. Now if I have selected the first index, then you can see that give me the reference of 1. So based on that I'm going to get the index value. So I'm just getting this variable selected is equal to index. So this is going to have me the selected index value. So now from the table I have to get the model that is associated with this respective table. So only then from the model I can get that respective element. So this is exactly similar like reading your context node, and from the context node you will read the element that is selected. So this case we am going to do it based upon the index. So from the O table you have this method called get model, using which you will be able to get the model. But before that you have to specify the name of the model that you wanted to get. So name of the model I believe is model name. Yes. So O model is equal to, from the table I get the model reference. Now you can see in the O model that it gives me the complete model, but that is not what I wanted. What I wanted is the exact second row. So from the model, if you check the Odata, it is going to give you the list of products that are available. So you can see that products are listed with the index products of 0, products of 1, products of 2, products of 3, products of 4, and so on. So now that I know my index, that I know that I should be picking this particular third record. So since this is an array, I'm just going to get this second, I mean the third index one, that is with the index number 2, I'm going to pick it from this particular model. So since it is going to return this as an array, from this array I am going to pick this particular element. So for that, data is equal to, in this array I wanted products of 1. So what this would return me is, this is going to return me the element with the index 1. So when I go to select this, so by default I have hard coded it to get the element 1. But technically if you go and see this data variable, it is going to have this element 1, which is 1 milk, low fat milk, price is 3.5, rating is 3, and so on. So I have got my actual object, but in the array I have hard coded the value, but instead of hard coding it, I'm just going to pass it from my, I'm going to pass the index dynamically using my selected variable. So what I'm doing is I'm just concatenating this products of, within that I'm concatenating the selected value, that is the index number, and I am fetching the data. So let me write it to the log. If I select this one, then here I'm going to have this 0th index. If I select the third one, then I'm going to have the third index that is obtained, because id, the index number, I am passing dynamically to get the value, right? So now I have got the value. Now I wanted to display my form, sorry, I wanted to display my form, and I wanted to populate the value in it. So the way we hide the form, we can also make it visible, which is, sorry, dollar, the id is form id, slide down. So now actually if there is no debugger, it would have slide down. So using this method, I'm going to make my form appear once again. Also, while making this form appear, I'm just going to go ahead and write some logic over here, which is to set the fields that are selected. Now that I know that the data is the structure that is containing all the fields that are required for me, I'm just going to get the ID of each and every form element, and I'm going to set the value to them. From the structure, I'm just transporting the value to a new variable. So I am setting the value with whatever I have in the variables. So I'm just accessing the form elements one after another, and I am setting the values. So I'm just making my form visible again. Whenever I'm making my form visible, I'm also fetching the form elements one by one. That is the elements that I have created with the ID for text field, ID, name, description. Based upon their ID, I'm picking them. I'm setting the value to them as well. So you can see that it has. So by now our application, it is just initial. Whenever I'm going to select this, it is going to show this form, and also it is populating the values in the form. Any doubts? Anything else that I have to clarify?
You can navigate to another screen also, right?
Yeah, that is up to you. However you want to build your application, you can do that.
So you will pop-up will select and line the
Yeah,
screen to show those field.
I did not get your point. What is it?
Yeah, if you choose one line and you can show it in pop-up screen like.
Yeah, that also you can do. You can use the dialog control and you can do that. And the fragment, yesterday I was saying you that I was not able to assign the controller reference, right? So for fragments, in the XML fragment, you will not be able to assign the controller reference as such. The top level control, I have used dialog yesterday. Instead of that, you have to use fragment definition. So only then to the fragment definition, you have to reference the controller name. So you can just get that coding from the developer guide itself. Okay, so the top level element should be fragment definition. So I have missed out that definition, which is why I was not able to assign the controller and the method was not triggered. Apart from that, whatever we did is fine. Okay, so if that is it, then I will wind up with this for now and we will sit again tomorrow.
Yeah, same time, right? Tomorrow.
No, no, we will sit in the evening because I wanted to complete the Fury app in next 3 days.
Yeah,
So tomorrow we will get started with the Fury app, if possible. Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, Srinivas.
Yeah.
Yeah, Srinivas.
Yes. Yes.
Can you send this video by tomorrow morning?
Yeah. Sure.
Why not? Before starting theory, we'll go through once this video.
Okay.
We can have a better idea. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.